Have you ever felt so exhausted and drained that you're left questioning if you're burning out? Hi, I'm Flic Taylor, and my passion for burnout and self-care came about when I became a mental health writer who'd lost her mental health to extreme burnout. I know, the irony is not lost on me. Join me as I host Everyday Burnout Conversations, the honest podcast that shares the stories of others from all walks of life as they recover from, manage and avoid burnout by prioritising their mental health and well-being. Expect to hear fascinating conversations, plus positive and actionable tips and tricks that can help you make the simple life changes your mental health will thank you for. Episodes will be delightfully wrapped up in some epic truths and great humour. So, enjoy! In this episode, I chat with the lovely Jo Bell of Write to Thrive. Jo is a writer, teacher and poet on a mission to help others thrive in their lives through journaling with honesty and compassion. Write to Thrive is grounded in her experience of writing to simply feel good, a transformative practice that she discovered after burnout and a severe period of anxiety and depression. Her classes and courses never fail to spread this magic, and I adore her journaling audios too. Jo's creative work has been published in several literary magazines and anthologies, and her debut novel was shortlisted for a major work in progress prize. She's performed at the Bowery Poetry Club in New York, Edinburgh Fringe, and she's recorded spoken word for the BBC. Now, this chat took place on a Sunday afternoon, and it echoes that lovely kind of relaxed vibe a Sunday can bring. We were able to really dive into a hearty and honest conversation about burnout, recovery and the joy of writing. And even if you're not into writing or journaling, I know I've got a sneaky suspicion that you're going to grab a notebook and pen after listening to this. So without further ado, let's enjoy this everyday burnout conversation with Jo Bell. Jo, I've been really looking forward to this lovely chat because I know you're no stranger to burnout. You've openly shared about this and we've chatted via DMs about this as well. And what's amazing is that it's led you to establish your incredible programme, Write to Thrive. And so it's just so lovely I get to sit and chat with you today. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's an honour to be here. I love the conversations that you hold, so I'm just pleased to be part of it.
Oh, thank you, Jo, because I know you'll appreciate, you feel quite alone in burnout and when you're struggling. And so it's just so lovely to hear the stories of others, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that I really struggled with, was feeling like it was just me that had only ever been through it.
Yeah.
And I think it can feel so lonely and so isolating. And the funny thing about anything to do with mental health or anything to do with burnout is that as soon as you start talking about it, other people talk about it. It's like, it's breaking that ice, isn't it? And then someone's got a story, you know, and you'll have discovered this, I'm sure, with all of your podcast guests and the different people that you speak to. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's just so comforting, isn't it? Because sometimes you don't want the prescriptive stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you just want that comforting, almost soothing blanket of other people's stories to kind of start you off and go, okay, I'm going to rest, I'm going to look after myself. And then there's a space for the prescriptive stuff. But right now, you just want to hear lovely stories. And I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're also individual, aren't we? So our journeys are so different. But I think when I listen to people's stories, it's like you take different parts of each of them, and like the way that they've coped with things is so helpful to just know how other people got through things. I find it really inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. So on that note, darling, would you be able to start us off by sharing your story of when you first kind of, you know, experienced overwhelm, exhaustion, burnout, those real kind of, you know, moments where you're like, oh my goodness. If you'd be able to share that with us, that would be lovely.
Of course. So the first time I experienced burnout, I was working in PR and I had got into quite a senior position and we had a lot of demanding clients and we're working on events. Everything kind of went wrong. I felt like I was working 24/7. I remember getting told off for not looking at my, at the time, BlackBerry on a Saturday because I just needed time to myself. I really needed to just be able to step away from it, and it just didn't seem to be possible. And I remember there was this moment where I thought, I love reading so much, and I realized I hadn't read a book for a whole year.
Wow.
And I couldn't imagine, my mind was so frantic all the time. And then there was just a day where my body said no. It was like, you cannot go to work. I couldn't face it. I could not face it. And that was the catalyst for leaving that career, because I just couldn't do it anymore. I really felt like it wasn't just that particular job and that particular company, but I could just see that for me, it was all too fast paced. There was no space for just decompression and just being switched off. And I know that I need that in my life. I think it is so important to have at least a day, at least one day a week where you're not thinking about anything other than just joy and the things you want to do.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it? When we're in those jobs, and I put my hand up, I was definitely in one of those situations. What you don't realise, you're almost operating from a point of survival, aren't you? Because you're kind of, I mean, we all know that negative inner critic, that can sometimes really plague us. But when you're operating from that level of survival, your nervous system is on such high alert, but you don't even clue into it. So the fact that you kind of were in a position where you thought, I need a day off, it's brilliant. But I completely understand the pressure of taking that work call and being told, why aren't you paying attention to your messages on a Saturday? I get that, that kind of situation where you don't question it, you just try and do it and survive, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I talked with a lot of my friends about this at the time, and we were all in our 20s at the time, and there's just this drive to be doing a really good job. And I don't know, it comes beyond everything else. It's like, I've got a job and this, I have to do really well in it. And I'm not really sure where that comes from. But I hope that people are a little bit more aware of how to take care of themselves now, because I really, really wasn't. And I think if I'd had some of the strategies that I now have, or even just being kind of aware of the conversations, I think things like podcasts, have brought so much attention to sort of health and well-being and how we can kind of support ourselves and why we need to. Whereas before, it kind of felt a bit shaming to say, actually, I'm not going to do that today, or I can't get that done. I found that I was just always pushing myself. I was just in that cycle. And then when you're in a cycle like that, at some point you have to stop, because it just can't keep going on forever.
Yeah. I remember it was probably about, was it 5-6 years ago? There was that real hustle culture. There were like some very prominent figures on social media, and they were just like putting out that message to work to the bone. I remember them, one figure, he would say, like, if you're a mum, then get up at 4 a.m. and do your hustle before you do your job, or why aren't you staying up until midnight after your kids go to bed? And it came with such a force that I think a lot of us were kind of influenced to some degree on, if I want something, I've got to hustle for it. And it was a whole culture, wasn't it? And I think it's interesting, and maybe it's the pandemic, but it's interesting. I really see I was not alone in burning out, and a lot of people are like, hang on a minute, hustle is not the way to go, alignment is. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even very recently, because I've now started my own business, I listened to a lot of business people, and there was somebody that was like, you cannot take any naps, you cannot have any downtime. If you want to have the business that you want, you need to work all the hours that are available. And I just thought, I'm so glad I've come to this at this point in my journey, where I can be like, no, I shall nap. I definitely will nap. And that will be just the best thing for everybody.
Absolutely. Because now you have that experience that you can go, actually, you know what? If I have a 2-hour nap, my afternoon is going to be a lot more productive than those days of when just backbreaking, pushing yourself in, that PR environment and just kind of wanting to do the best. I get it, Jo.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But the funny thing is, it didn't actually stop me from burning out again. So,
Darling.
yeah. So after I was in PR, I retrained to become a teacher for many reasons. I really love English. Love, love, love working with young people. I just think they get such bad press, but they're so fun and they're just beautiful to work with. But many years into my teaching career, I was also writing a book full time, and I'd taken on so many different things at work. And I came to this day where I went home to have a nap before I was going to do my novel edits. And I just got into bed and couldn't stop crying. It just broke. Something in me just broke. And I remember that so vividly, that feeling of like my body like just would not stop. So I left my house and I phoned my friend, and I was sitting in a park and I was like, can you come and get me? And she said, where are you? And I was like, I'm just underneath a tree. I need you to find me. I couldn't even walk to her car. Like I was just like physically, emotionally, everything just broken. Like I just had to stop. And that burnout was much, much, much more serious for me. I really couldn't see a way forward. And I hope that what has come out of that will mean that never happens again, because now I feel like I've gone to the very brink of where burnout can take you.
It's a scary place, isn't it, actually? And I think this is what's so lovely about having these very honest conversations, Jo. Thank you for this, because I think we can very easily use burnout as a bit of a buzzword. And, you know, it makes me cringe sometimes when I hear people say, oh, I'm just feeling burnt out. And you kind of just want to go, just look after yourself. Like it's a warning sign. And so listening to you sit under that tree, like I'm just in awe of you actually, Jo, that you thankfully, even though it was a point where it felt very dark and you couldn't see a future, I love how you had that self-love and worth to phone your friend, because that's a hard thing to do, to ask for help.
Yeah, it really, really is. And I've lived with depression and anxiety since I was a teenager, and I'd been through twice before moments where I had to ask for help. And I knew that if I asked for it, I would get it. And I knew that it would be something that would start to help me to take steps forward. And I wish that everyone knew that, because I feel that sometimes when people are in these places, especially if they haven't been there before and it's kind of snuck up on them, it can be really difficult to know how to get support. And also it feels, and it isn't at all, but it feels shameful. I don't know why. I think there is still this horrible stigma, and I think we are getting there, and a lot of people talk a lot more openly about things. But I remember sitting I think it was after my PR kind of basically burnout, breakdown. My dad took me to the doctor, and I remember sitting outside the doctor's office and just being like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? You know? And it's that horrible moment. But once you've done it, getting support is just such a beautiful thing. And it really enabled me. It feels like such a long time in my life now. When I look back, it's not. It was so short, that period of really intense depression and that period of really intense kind of nowhere is safe apart from my house. That kind of period was very actually quick when I think about it, but it just felt long at the time. But it was quick because I managed to get support. So I just feel like everyone deserves to have that, you know.
Oh, Jo, that's incredible. I'm sure people listening will really relate to that moment in the doctor's surgery. I can remember talking to a friend who was on the brink of going to ask for help. And she said, but what do I even say? Where do I even start? Because we spend so long putting up with things and trying our best. And as I say, it's in that survival frame of mind, isn't it? That you go so far down the road that you're kind of like, I don't even know how to unravel this kind of mess I've been carrying on my shoulders. And it's a hard thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think what we're really guilty of in our culture as well is comparing. So kind of I don't really have a big problem. I saw this a lot in the pandemic when I was teaching my classes online, this idea that I'm not a frontline worker. I'm in my house. I've got Netflix. I don't have a problem. And I remember Brene Brown saying on her podcast, this is not the time to rank suffering. And I was just like, oh, Brene. I mean, I just love her anyway. But she's completely right. And I think that so often I definitely looked at my own life and thought, but what is wrong? What is wrong? You've got a good job, you've got this, you've got that. But if it doesn't feel right, if it feels stressful, if it feels overwhelming, then it is. It is. It's that what is real for us is real. And I think the moment that we decide to break out of that can be such a beautiful moment, even if it's terrifying, because it liberates us and it lets us say no more. This will not go on. And that is such a beautiful thing, to stand up for yourself like that and show yourself that you believe that you are worth more than that situation.
Oh, Jo, absolutely. Oh, I mean, just those words alone. It goes to show how hard we can be on ourselves, because I'm just thinking your experience with PR and in those days, and how you would have been pushing yourself, and then how you've now arrived at a place where you're just being kind, you're showing yourself that compassion, which is incredible. And you're right, that what Brene Brown, I mean, anything that incredible woman says is just life transforming, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But she's right. We shouldn't, there's no reason for any of us to be ranking suffering. Like, we're all struggling on different levels. And that,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we all benefit, we benefit when we take care of ourselves. Everyone around us benefits. We benefit from our friends taking care of themselves, because they can really help us. And I think that part isn't really talked about as much as it should be, because I have a lot of people that come to my classes and I teach a lot about self-compassion, and so many women say, but am I not just giving myself a free pass? Is this not just a bit self-indulgent? And it's absolutely not. Like, it's just the foundation of actually going out and showing up how we want to show up, and not being depleted, and not being torn in a million directions, and not feeling like we're not doing enough, which were all things that I was feeling all the time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so right. And when we show up for ourselves, when we show the world that we're looking after ourselves, it inspires other people to do the same.
100%, 100%. And that is such a beautiful process. That ripple effect is so powerful. So powerful. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And so I love how, actually, Jo, can you tell us how these experiences led you to establish Right to Thrive?
Of course, with pleasure. So the day, about 3 weeks after the tree, when I was sitting in a park crying, I was then signed off work, and I had a holiday booked to New York, and I hate the word should. I felt like I should have been excited, but I really felt very nervous. I knew I could have a good time when I was there. Like, I knew it was good distraction. I knew I would be with my friend, and I wouldn't feel like real life. So I wasn't that concerned about the holiday, but I was concerned about the moment that I came home. And I had so much judgment around being signed off work, I remember handing over my list to my friend of all the things that I did outside of teaching my classes. And she was like, no wonder you're sick. Right. I just had so much judgment around getting signed off work, which now I just think, that system is there to help people. And I've just learned so much more about accepting mental illnesses as physical illnesses. And at the time, I really wasn't there with that. So I wrote this letter to myself before I left for New York, and I left it on my pillow. And the letter said something along the lines of, I've still got it somewhere. I don't need you to do anything. I know you're scared. I know you don't know what's going to happen. I just need you to stay here. I just need you to stay here. All you need to do. Yeah. And those words from myself, there's something about your own words to yourself that is magical. I can't really explain it. But it is a magical thing, because you know if someone else had said that to me, it wouldn't have been the same. But because I said it, I really, really believed it. So I started writing, journaling every single day. And in counselling, I talked about how I used to journal, but I was so negative and so horrible to myself. And I realized that had become my reality because I was telling myself such horrible things about myself, about my life, about my appearance, like all of it. And I think most people think these things. I think our inner critics are trained to be so loud, but I had the pages. I still have those journals. So I know how horrible I was. And I just had this kind of what Oprah would call an aha moment where I thought, if I can make myself feel that bad, I can help myself to feel better. So I started rewriting my stories and I started challenging all of these things that I was blindly believing about myself and my life. And I started speaking to myself differently with compassion, with kindness. And when I did that, everyone around me noticed. And my sister said, "How did you do that? How did you do that? Because I want to do that too." And I saw how many women maybe weren't suffering with depression, maybe weren't having horrific anxiety, or maybe they were, but so many women have these horrible critical inner voices, and we find it so hard to have compassion and to even honor our own experiences and value our own experiences. So I started teaching classes and basically sharing the practices that I had come up with myself that had really helped me, and discussing at the end, people's experiences and learning more about it and developing it. And then I trained in kind of words for wellbeing facilitation. And now I just have this amazing kind of workshops, courses. I have a membership, I have audios, I have all of these kind of things that are either out there or in the works. And it's just so beautiful because I get to see the impact. So many people have messaged me to say, "This has changed my life." And for me, I just think, what an incredible thing. And the best thing about it is you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for a therapy appointment. You don't have to wait on a waiting list. You can just go there and you can find that compassion for yourself, and you can honor your own experiences and just start to be kinder. Yeah, so that's how it happened.
Jo, oh my goodness, it's incredible. And it's so funny, that inner critic, isn't it? Because I think a lot of us can carry it around with us. And it's only when you kind of take a step back and maybe you journal, or you start to look, maybe you get outside help, you start to look in the mirror and you realise that some of those stories, they're not even yours. Like, you've been carrying them around, but they're with the lens of other people who have said something to you for whatever reason. Like, most of the time it's not bloody true, is it?
Well, 100%, absolutely. And I think it's just such a fascinating thing. So when you write them out, sometimes I have an exercise where we just write what the inner critic is saying for a good amount of time. And I'm like, just notice when it becomes ridiculous, because it will become ridiculous. It will become like they're saying things where you're like, that's just a bit too far. And it's when you get that out, and we know that that voice is there to protect us, but so many of these things, like you're saying, are so outdated, and they come from other people and they come from other times, and we don't need them anymore.
And they weigh heavy. They weigh heavy to carry. Like, it's not even the minute you start to, look at these criticisms written down on paper and you realise how bloody ridiculous they are, you feel lighter, don't you?
100%, definitely. I think it's just that awareness, isn't it? I mean, I say I've got two inner critics. One's like a bit of a mean girl, and the other one's like Eeyore. So my Eeyore inner critic is just like, why bother? No one wants to hear it anyway. It's that kind of idea. And it's just, it can become a little bit comical when you can bring these things out. But when you keep them inside, and for me, I was keeping all of my feelings inside. I was keeping all of my shameful thoughts about myself inside, like everything inside. And that's what makes us sick. So I think once we can bring them out and we can work with them, we just have such a beautiful opportunity to rewrite our stories and to become more confident and calm and just beautifully compassionate to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. That shame piece, it's a rotter to deal with, isn't it? I don't know anyone who has struggled and not felt that shame piece. It kind of really pulls you back, doesn't it? And stops you from, doing what's right for you.
100%. I remember someone saying to me in a workshop that she was horrified that she would have all of her thoughts and feelings written down. And I totally understand that. I've been there, and I always say you can rip up your writing. It doesn't matter. Like what matters is you get the process. It's a bit like going to a yoga class. It's like working through the sequence and then you leave feeling lighter. You don't have to keep your journals. But I really do think that we all carry so much inside ourselves. So many of the things that we think are shameful are just things that we all don't vocalize, but we're all feeling,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. And so you must see like in real time, you do your virtual workshops, you must see how your clients, as it were, just kind of blossom from doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so beautiful to witness. It is such a joy because they're just going through the same process that I went through, where it's like, this isn't true. And I think another key part of that is just the space. So one of my biggest challenges when I started Right to Thrive was not speaking, because I go to so many workshops where people say journal and then they just continue to speak. So I have sections that are like 10, 12 minutes long where I don't say anything. And I think that's so important because I know that when I got very sick, I was pushing everything into, it was like, I think of it like a cupboard. Like I pushed all of the emotions I didn't want to see into, I'd be like, oh, shame, don't want to deal with you, frustration, heartbreak, like everything. Just shoved it away, didn't think about it, got on with the day to day, and it doesn't work because you have the cupboard to deal with. It's going to spring open one day, but also you have the dread, you have this kind of like suppression in your body and in your mind. So even just giving yourself the space to write, I think is so, so powerful. But I do understand that people can be hesitant to do it because I was so negative to myself. So I understand that other people also found themselves in negative spirals in journals. So it's not just journaling, it's that awareness of actually how you're talking to yourself. And that's where I think the exercises come in.
And I bet there's a sense of solidarity as well. And I think this is probably what is so incredible about your membership is that, you have a community of people all trying to do the same thing, but all supporting each other. Sometimes when you say, like, sometimes I'm just there and I don't speak for 10 minutes, I bet there's a lot of power actually that comes through, that lovely energy of just having someone sit with you while you're journaling and you're trying to shift these heavy blocks in you. There's a lot of comfort by having someone just the other side of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think so. And I think I noticed in my own journaling, and I think that Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, talks about this. It's like a page and a half and you get to the truth. So when you kind of write in the morning, if you do like a quick 5 minutes, you're probably actually not giving yourself a chance to say what you want to say. So, or giving yourself a chance to really, what I call surfacing. So really see what comes up from your subconscious that you maybe weren't expecting, what patterns you're in, what loops you're in. But I think one of the beautiful things as well about writing regularly is you notice, you're like, oh, I'm writing about this again. So what am I going to do about it? So then it gives you agency. And at the end of my workshops, I most of the time have a share session. So we all talk about just the experience. I never ever ask anyone to read anything they've written unless they want to, but that's quite rare. It's more the experience. And as you're saying, it's this idea that we're actually all feeling kind of the same things and all navigating these paths. And it's that togetherness that is so, so beautiful.
Yeah, and there's power in hearing the words of someone else, because often I find if I have an internal block, sometimes just hearing someone articulate their situation, it kind of makes me go, oh, That's what I'm feeling. Oh, and it's just that joy of, not feeling alone, but having someone articulate your experience. It just, I don't know, it just eases the situation.
100%. I actually think that's why podcasts are so popular, because we all see bits of ourselves in these conversations. I mean, I was thinking the other day about why are they so compelling? Because we all love them. And I think it's that just connection with humanity and connection to all of these different conversations. It's such a beautiful thing that we have in our lives now.
Yes. And it's interesting, like with the pandemic, I've spoken to a lot of people about this. You can be living in a house with 3 or 4 other people, but you can still feel quite alone because, you're trying to navigate your experience. And I think when you tune into a conversation in a podcast, a lovely, honest one, there is something so rejuvenating. It just makes you feel seen and heard, and it just lights your fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, it's okay to be imperfect. And I think for a long time with social media, when it first really started and the way that things can be perceived on there, I think almost podcasts are a little bit of an antidote in a lot of ways, because it's like, we're just having conversations. This is a beautiful thing that we can all kind of listen to and be part of and feel part of.
Yeah, this is what I love about your social media, Jo. Your Instagram feed is full of these nuggets of little squares that just almost remind you to give yourself permission to be imperfect, because it's so easy, isn't it, to go down that scroll hole and you're looking and you're thinking of all these things and it's so easy to detach yourself from who you are in your heart. And I love your messaging on there. It's brilliant.
Well, thank you so much. I think for everything in my classes, it's always stuff that I've used, and it's just so important to me that I'm really authentic, and I don't know everything. I'm still learning. I'll always be learning, but I'm learning alongside everyone. And I think that we are now in a society where that's a little bit more compelling even than somebody who has all the answers.
You've hit the nail on the head. I think that's exactly what it is, Jo, is because if you're struggling, then again, you don't want something clinical and prescriptive, do this, this, and this, and this. You kind of want, when you're feeling fragile and, oh God, you feel so lost at times, don't you? Mm-hmm. When you're standing in that space, it's so lovely to just have a gentle, loving, kind, compassionate person come and kind of hold your hand and just encourage you to do the same to yourself. And I think what you're doing is just beautiful, amazing.
Thank you. It's a joy. I really do think it is a joy for me because I am really authentic on it.
Yeah.
I think if I was putting myself under pressure to always do like beautiful canvas slides and things like that, I wouldn't enjoy it the way that I do. And I think it's just that connection. And I think we've kind of lost that in a way. Like, even though we're all on there, it's only in the last, I would say, year that I've really started to think, no, I'm connecting with other human beings. It's not just me putting stuff out. It's like, how are we connecting and what do we want to be talking about? And just noticing, I think it is such a beautiful tool, but it's up to us to use it beautifully. Yeah.
Oh, that's good, Jo. Oh, yes, you're so right, because I'm just sat here thinking about my scroll I did like 2 hours ago. Yeah, you're so right. We need to be paying attention to who we are following, who we are allowing into our circle. And if that doesn't align with who we are, then it's okay to unfollow. I remember watching a brilliant Instagram video of yours saying that you'd come on that day and you'd unfollowed some people because it just wasn't, it's okay to do that. It's okay to take a break and then, and I was thinking, oh yeah, it is.
100%. Like the energy I go to Instagram now with is like, who can I love on? Like, who's doing cool things? Who can I like really get behind? Who can I like? Whose stuff can I share? Who do I want to comment on? And I think I didn't really have that before. But that's what we should be thinking when we're going to places like Instagram, because it's kind of designed that we can just be passive and we can just be like passively liking things. But if we actually started to think about it as more of a place to start conversations, it would become such a more exciting space, I think.
Oh, Jo, there's so much to applaud in that. I also want to applaud you because I see how that's a far cry from your previous work experience, your careers. Like that's a huge leap from there. I get it and I see it, and that's not an easy leap to make. But my goodness, are you doing incredible things now?
Oh, thank you. I think we know one of the reasons that I really struggled in PR is that I felt like I couldn't be myself all the time, and I want to live a life where I can. And even when I was teaching, I was myself. I mean, you have to put on a little bit of sparkle for the kids, but I really just was myself, because I think it's so important. If we try and be other people, we're just going to make ourselves unhappy and not give in the way that we can. And I think it's just a shame that society has made us feel in lots of ways that we need to be different than we actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's draining, isn't it? I don't think people recognize or acknowledge the amount of energy it takes from you to be a different person, to put on the front. It's, it takes so much of your battery power, doesn't it?
100%. And I also don't think it's sustainable. I just don't think it's a sustainable way to live. No. I think that's why you see, celebrities having breakdowns and things, because they just can't do it forever, Yeah, it's such an interesting one.
It's so unhealthy. And I think the fact that when you live that life, and I put my hand up, I did it, it's amazing how incredible our bodies are, that they, take you down, they take you out, and they're like, if you're not going to listen to me, all these flags I've been waving, now you're going to listen.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's where so much anxiety can come from, because if you don't feel that you can be yourself, of course you feel anxious. Of course you feel like you're always going to get it wrong. And there's nothing worse than being in that headspace, that I'm always going to get it wrong headspace. That is not a way to live. That's not a good way to be living.
That's a terrible hamster wheel to be on, because again, I know when I've done that, you're not only thinking, I'm not good enough, but you're looking for almost the signs to prove your thoughts are right. You start to look for the negative stuff all the time, don't you?
Absolutely. And that's where people get sucked into social media validation, because they need that to validate the person they're trying to be. And I think that when you place your value on something outside of yourself, it will always be tenuous, because the only value that we can really have exists within us. We can really only validate ourselves. And just going back to my letter and the letters I've written myself since, the way that I talk to myself means that I can go out and I can fail. And I know that I won't beat myself up. I won't. And if I know that I won't, then I'll find a way through it. But when you are in that critical voice, and I didn't even realize that I was there at all. Yeah. I would have said that I did value myself, but I didn't. I mean, I was always criticizing myself all the time. And so I think I almost had a subconscious fear of, well, if I failed at something, then how is that going to affect the way that I feel when I'm then telling myself all these horrible stories about myself? Just falsities. I mean, when I left my PR job, I just remember there was a day where my sister came into my room. We used to live together, and I was just weeping because I was like, what is wrong with me? Everyone wants my job. I have a really good job. This is a great career. Why am I not happy? And I was so not tuned into what was going on inside me that I kind of looked at, but the world sees this as success, and couldn't really understand why it didn't feel successful to me,
It's a hard place to be when you work so hard and you're so driven to achieve something, and when you get it and it's not in alignment with who you are and your heart, your values, your moral compass, everything. When you're standing there and you're like, oh, this isn't actually working for me. I understand why your brain would go, okay, but look at the positive, like look at why it should work for you. And then you just don't, you second guess yourself, the self-doubt creeps in. Oh, it's a battle, isn't it? Within your mind. Yeah.
It really, really is. And I know so many writers, and, you know, the one thing that I've wanted for so long is to have a novel published. But I see so many writers that I know who are really successful and they're just brought down by one bad Amazon review. You know, it's like, it's that sense of other people validating us. And we really need to do the inner work, as much as it might feel harder and it might not feel as effective. It actually is the thing that helps us to live these beautiful lives, the lives that we actually want to live. And to even know what that is, you know, so many times it's like, what do you want? And I know I did a workshop just at the end of the year, and I asked the question, you know, so what do you want for your life? What just brainstorm. What are your big dreams for your life? And then from there, we brought it back to 2022. And somebody said, I've never asked myself that question, you know? And it's so interesting to me, because I think that we think about that at 16 when we're applying for a university course, or we're getting into the world of work, or wherever it might be, but we fail to really continue to think about it and to value that kind of reflection.
You know, you've nailed something there, Jo, that fear of failure. Mm-hmm. It's so true. Like, I remember being a kid and thinking that was the one career I'm going to go into, and I'm going to be grateful for a job, and that's what I'll do. And, you know, even now, 2022, like, one of my sons said to me, oh, I'm not sure I know what I'm going to do. And you could see his little mind, he was doubting himself. And I'm like, darling, you're going to have like 3 or 4 careers in your life, and you're going to try different things, and you're going to live your life, and that's what's going to happen. And you're not going to put any pressure on yourself or worry or doubt yourself. You're just going to go out and see what works.
100%. Oh. I'm so pleased that he's had that support from you, and that I hope that children have that now, because I think all we can do is the next right thing, like the next right thing, and then the next right thing, and really tune into ourselves. And I think for me, I really ignored my inner voice a lot. And then you get to the point where it's like, oh, now it's really unsustainable.
Oh, it's so true. And I think I'm also cheerleading that moment that you wrote the letter to yourself, Jo, because you say, oh, I ignored my inner voice, but there was something there so strong that you wrote that beautiful letter to yourself, which has then almost, it was heaven sent. It's just led to you developing Right to Thrive, which is just changing people's lives.
Yeah, it's really, really special, really, really special. And it also gave me the confidence to leave my teaching job. You know, I really, again, you know, I was working in a great school, I had a really good job, I enjoyed being a teacher, but it didn't enable me to have the creative time that I want in my life. And I really, because I was writing every single day, and you don't have to do that. So you don't have to write every single day for this to help you. I do want to emphasize that. I just personally do. And when you write and you know, you're really tuned into actually how you feel, when something comes along and you think, yeah, that's what I need. Like, that's it. And you feel it in your bones. It's like, well, where am I if I ignore that? Where am I? And I think it's that kind of like tuning in really, really, really strongly to your internal systems, and then taking the next right step, and then the next right step.
Yes. And doing what you want to do, because without shadow of a doubt, Jo, you would have been phenomenal in your PR job. You would have been a phenomenal teacher. I know this just talking to you. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it if it doesn't bring you joy, if it doesn't fuel your fire. And it's a brave thing, a courageous thing to kind of say, actually, I'm going to do something else now. I see that.
Yeah, I think it's so important. But it is brave. And it's interesting. I write this weekly letter every week just about something I'm kind of working through, and then I give people prompts so that they can follow along themselves and explore it in their own lives. And this one was about compliments. I used to be so awful at taking compliments, and now I'm like, yeah, it was brave. And I can feel that. And I think that's what self-compassion can do, is like, you can really acknowledge yourself instead of what I used to do, just bat things away. Yeah, like whatever.
I so relate to that, because I've been doing a lot of work of, because, I find it very easy to go out and give a lot of love and cheerlead and lift people up, but I found it very difficult to accept it myself because I just didn't believe it. And it's so interesting you say that, because even the other day, actually, I was at a Shoppers Drug Mart, which is like a Boots here, and I was getting something and I was going through the self-service checkout and I've messed it up. So I had to press the light, and along came this lady who works there, and I've known her for years. I go in and you get your stuff and you say hi. And I was like, oh, Yvonne, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I've done. And she went, oh, anything for you. It's okay. And I heard that and I thought, even a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, I wouldn't have heard that. I would have just heard, you're an idiot, Flic. Can't you even use a self-service checkout? So it's, this is the magic of showing up and giving yourself that compassion. And I think it's so important, just this conversation and you sharing that. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like not a one and done. It's not like, oh, I've learned how to do self-compassion and moving on. It's like, this is a practice. I talk about this a lot. We're sold this like magic bullet, just do this thing, just buy this thing, just whatever this thing, and that will be your life, like magical, and you won't have to worry anymore. And all there is showing up for yourself again and again. And I think that's what I find really beautiful about writing. If you show up for yourself once a week, once a month, whatever it is, you're showing up and you're saying, I value myself enough to put things down on the page, and I value myself enough to take up the space. And I think that's really powerful. I think it's really, really powerful. And I know that a lot of people kind of talk about journaling, but I don't think we're quite there with how powerful it really can be.
Absolutely. And this is why I love your journaling audios, Jo, because, I personally, journaling has always been really good for me. And I've really relied on it the last 3-4 years. But as you say with Julia Cameron, it take a page and a half to get to the good stuff. And so sometimes it's very natural just for me to document what's happening. And sometimes I know deep down inside, I need to dig a little deeper. And, that's a hard thing to do sometimes. And your journaling audios are beautiful. That first of all, your voice is so soothing and gorgeous, and your accent, I'm just like, and relax. But they really do. It's that loving, guiding, hand-holding. Just here.
Yeah, I really wanted to create something. So I made the audios because I really wanted to create something where people could just put them on in their own time, at their own, pace, whatever it might be, and just feel really nurtured and really supported in that moment. And I always begin them with breath and grounding. And I think that's the part that can get missed if you're like, I've got 10 minutes, go, go, go. And it's just, okay, no, we can take time and we can make sure that we're okay. And the sequences that I used in them are all ones that have come from my workshops and are all designed to be really nurturing and really loving and really help you move through things, even difficult things, with grace and with compassion. And I do think, of course, you can go and journal on your own, but there is a magic to that kind of sequencing, and to be held in that space, I think it's quite special.
Oh, absolutely. It really is. You're doing incredible things, Jo. You really are. I just, so for someone listening to this who is new to journaling, are there any tips that you give to beginners to say, this is where I would start for now?
Yeah, absolutely. My first tip is just really take the pressure off yourself. So relax, loosen your shoulders, all that stuff. I like to just set up a bit of a space, so like light a candle, have a nice cup of tea, just treat it like it's a nice thing you're doing for yourself instead of something that you need to box tick. And that's where it comes into with time of day. If you're like, I must do this in the morning, but you have children jumping on you in the morning, or you just know you're not going to get up at 4:30 to do journaling, that's absolutely fine. Choose moments that really work for you. It can be twice weekly, it can be every day, it can be weekly. But I think choosing a regular slot, particularly if you're starting, is a really good idea, one that feels really good. And then I would just start with, how are you? And try and free write just anything that comes up from that question. And then you can continue to ask yourself questions. Oh, why did I write this down? My 2 rules for writing are to think about if it's honest. So quite often in my writing, I'll write things and afterwards I'll write, this is a lie, because it is a lie. And I'm like, not in a really critical way, but really thinking, well, why have I written that down? Why was that important for me to do? And then, is it kind? So am I showing myself compassion, or is this a really critical narrative? So I would bear those 2 questions in mind and then just start free writing. And just see what comes up. I would do 10 minutes though, because like I said, with shorter sections of writing, it can be really difficult to actually get to what is needed to be said. So I think 10-15 minutes, I would set a timer. I used to set my Alexa for 15 minutes in the morning and just really give yourself that space. And if you find that really, really hard, I do write a letter that has sequence prompts. So if you want more direction, that is a place to go. It's totally free.
Oh, amazing. I can remember seeing a picture of your desk on Instagram. Was it on Instagram? Maybe it was a blog. I can't remember. I remember seeing your desk and an egg timer, because at that point I was feeling very blocked in writing. I could write my journal. Yes, I love it. And I was like, that's what I need. I've got to give myself the space and the compassion. It's not something to put on the bloody to-do list. It's something to help you, to suit you.
Absolutely. And it's not something that you have to achieve. I think it's not something like that you need to say, oh, I did my 15 minutes of journaling today. It doesn't have to be like that. It's just like, how does it feel? And I always in my workshops, I'm like, just notice how you feel in your body. Just notice what's coming up, because it can be really brave to sit with yourself and to sit with your thoughts and to sit with what's going on, particularly if you are in a period of burnout, a period of depression, a period of anxiety, or if you just have lots of things going on. It can be really, really difficult.
And I think if you are sat there dealing with burnout, depression, anxiety, you're already being so hard on yourself. We both know this, don't we? You're already that shame, you're being hard on yourself. It's there. And I love how these journaling practices you have with Right to Thrive, they are gently encouraging you to step out of those patterns, those perfectionist tendencies.
Yeah.
Of everything has to be perfect, neat. As you say, write freely, see what comes up. I guess you're advocating to be curious as opposed to judgmental, aren't you?
Absolutely. And also really expressive. Sometimes I write in big capital letters or just scribble and just see how it feels, And I think that can be so liberating, especially if you're putting yourself in these little boxes. It's so beautiful. There's something that I didn't invent. It's called Rage on the Page, where you just write angrily for like 3 pages and then you tear it up. So there are lots of different methods, but it is that encouragement and nurture and that nourishing kind of energy, because just like any space you can go to your journal and you can be in a negative spiral and you can keep writing horrible things to yourself. I did that for years. So it's making sure that you're really, really paying attention to what's coming out. And that's why I love that question, is this kind? Because, I'll be like, I'm really disappointed about whatever. And then I'm like, well, I'm not being very kind to myself because I'm a human being and human beings make mistakes. And I also think there's something about building a vocabulary. So I have these phrases that I use in workshops for what I call the love bath, where we just write to ourselves with love for 5 minutes. It's like really beautiful. But it's learning the vocabulary. It's like learning to say, I'm so proud of you. It's okay to make mistakes. It's like we don't get taught these things. And there's this weird perception that being kind to ourselves is arrogant, which I don't really understand. But I definitely think that people kind of have that perception. And it's just like learning that we can be kind, that we can be loving, that it's really important and it's important for everyone. So I think once we can start to use those words and find words that feel really authentic, it really makes a huge difference. Because I know with affirmations are one of my really go-to tools. I absolutely love them. I find them very good for anxiety, but they have to be things you can believe. So if you're going from, you just feel absolutely rubbish, you're not going to go from I'm not enough to I'm enough. That's not going to work. Your brain's going to be like, well, you're saying that, but I don't believe it. So there has to be a middle ground of, I recognize I'm really hard on myself and I don't feel worthy, but I am showing up for myself every day, or just something. I mean, a lot of my affirmations are like, I'm safe, or it is safe to speak up today. It can be things that are really, really simple that you write out again and again that just give you that confidence. And it's about, just showing up, using these phrases and learning. It's almost like learning this new part of language that is kindness for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I'm listening to this, Jo. First of all, I had to write that down. Am I being kind? I'm gonna have to put that on a sticky note and shove it right on the front of my journal, because let's face it, probably not. But you're right. I mean, let's say I've had decades of using language in regards to observing myself. None of it has been kind. You're right. We have to create new vocabulary. Yeah. And this is why your membership is so powerful, because that's actually a very hard thing to do. You're rewriting these patterns and these, you're recreating this vocabulary. And this is why it's so lovely to have that guidance and solidarity of others doing the same.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think it's also the other reason that I started a membership in particular is that I just know what you get from it when you do it long term. Yeah. So when you keep on doing it, and even if you only do it twice a month, it's still better than doing it not at all. So it's like using that system really to just encourage people to keep on showing up for themselves. But I always say, don't criticize when you don't, applaud when you do, because we always criticize ourselves for not doing the thing, but we need to applaud ourselves when we actually show up, because that's what makes us feel good and that's what makes us come back again. Is that feeling like, actually, I haven't written for 3 weeks, but I'm back. Great, well done, And again, that's just a process, I think, of relearning. It's the unlearning, isn't it, of all of these things and these critical pathways that we've just been going down for so long.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking it really helps you to take a moment to tap into yourself, tap into what you need at that point. It's not a daily to-do list of self-care. It's not a daily to-do list of the chores, of the things that you think you should be doing. It's that take a moment. What do you need? I think that's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I talk about this line, like there's a line and survives at one end and thrives at the other, and we're always going up and down it. So some days I'm just right at survive, and it's just like, how do I get through the day? And then other times I'm more thriving, so I can challenge myself. But I know in life I'll always be going up and down that line. And what writing enables me to do is to bounce back faster. So it enables me to come back quicker, and I really, really value that. And I think one of the things there is like, if I'm in survival mode, well, what do I need? And my need is going to be very different from if I'm thriving. So when I'm thriving, I might need to challenge myself. Might need to step out my comfort zone. But when I'm just surviving, I might need really nourishing food. I might need to call a friend. And it's this awareness of like where we are and acceptance, because I think so often we can really resist where we are, and it's okay to just be getting through the day. We all have times like that. It's just part of our life. And I wish that people would talk about that a little bit more, because I think it would normalize it a bit more.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking, at the beginning of our chat, you were saying, oh, I've burnt out a couple of times and I hope I don't burn out again. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, oh, you won't. You won't, because you show up to yourself every day and you tune into yourself and to what you need.
I hope so, but I also know that I am a human being, and you just don't know,
You don't know, but I'm also, you see, I'm like you. I've done it twice now. Yeah. And let's face it, I have spent years cruising towards burnout. I'm sure the only reason I didn't burn out in my 20s was because my body was far too young and it just dealt with what came its way. But there's so much power in that, because when we're on that hamster wheel, this is why I burnt out the second time. This is why I had to take some time off, and I thought, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Have I overachieved my burnout recovery? Like, that's embarrassing. But it's because I recovered, I felt better, and then I applied the same patterns and behaviours to my life again. I can remember listening to a CEO of a health and wellness company out here. And he said he built this company up from his kitchen table, did incredibly well. It's amazing. And he burnt out. So he went to, somewhere beautiful, India, Philip. It was somewhere lovely with this incredible yoga retreat. Spent a month, relaxed, recovered, came back. A month later, he was starting to show the signs again. And he said, it's because I didn't change. Yeah.
That makes complete sense. I mean, if we just go back into the same patterns, we won't change.
No.
We won't. And now, I have naps. I do all of these things to take care of myself. And I just know how important they are. And it's not just important in terms of not burning out. It's just important in terms of enjoying my life. And I think it's like that. It's okay to enjoy my life. I don't have to always be proving things. It's just like, I can just be here and just enjoy it. Isn't that what life should be about? I think it is.
You're so right. How many of us were brought up to believe that success only comes from hard work?
Cool. Mm-hmm.
I can remember leaving school and the address was from a guy, banking industry, saying like, the harder you work, the luckier you'll be. Great for a load of, young kids. But, you're right. Where is the go and enjoy yourself?
Yeah.
And go see what.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a strange society that we live in where there seems to be more value in working than there does in enjoying your life. I think that's such a strange, skewed way. But I also think that there are conversations and people are starting to kind of wake up a bit from that cycle, from that cycle that I think we can all find ourselves in. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the success barometer.
Yeah.
You're only successful if you have this, and this. I think I can remember, again, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I listened to a podcast with interviewing Sarah Blakely. She's the creator of Spanx. Don't you just love her? Well, she was sharing the story, and you probably heard it as well then, when she was a kid. It was her and her brother and her dad. I want to say her dad was in law, and it was a Sunday lunch ritual. Sit down, have lunch. Let's tell me what you failed at this week. That's brilliant. And she said the focus was on what they failed at and celebrating that more than the success.
I love that so much. That is a beautiful way to live, isn't it? Like, imagine if we all did that. That is just incredible, because it takes away the fear, doesn't it? It takes away the fear of what might happen. Yeah.
And embracing that we're human and it's okay to fail.
And you learn so much. I've learned so much from things that, do you know, I wouldn't even label them as failures anymore. But it's just like that process of learning, and, you know, you're going to keep going. And I think this is one of the things that I really found, that one of the places that I've got to is just like, I will cope, you know?
Yes.
I will cope no matter what happens. But for a long time, I just don't think I believed that. I had this kind of feeling, and I think this is what anxiety does. It's this feeling that at some point, something's going to fall apart. And you don't really know what the something is, but it's just this kind of foreboding feeling in the back of your mind that suggests that something bad is going to happen to you. And it's not even true. It's like that. It's such a strange thing.
It is. We automatically, so many of us automatically default to the what if something goes wrong. And it's not many of us go, what if this really worked out well? It's not often we go there, is it?
100%. One of my favorite questions is, what is the absolute best case scenario? Like, what is the absolute best case scenario? The absolute best. Like, what is the absolute best? Because we don't spend time thinking about that. And that is to do with the way our brains are programmed and negative bias. But imagine if we spent more time thinking about what we did want and more time thinking about what went right, what could go right, than what could go wrong. I just think we'd be living completely differently.
Oh, Jo, that's another post-it note for my journal, darling. Done. That's another one.
Fabulous.
Oh, this is why you're so incredible at what you do. And so what do you do these days to look after yourself? You know, what kind of things help you? Like, show up to your self-care?
Yeah, so my self-care looks like I'm back to doing yoga. I fall in and out of it, but I really love yoga. And when I do it, it really helps me. I eat really nourishing food. That's quite an important piece. I don't have half as much sugar as I used to have, but I will never give up sugar. I would very much doubt that I'd ever give up sugar. And I think it's that balance. Like, self-care for me is like, you need to also, sometimes self-care looks like watching something on television and drinking a glass of wine and eating pizza. Sometimes that is what it looks like. And sometimes it's something that would be seen to be more self-care, like running or yoga and that kind of thing. But the biggest thing for me is dancing. I dance every single day, and it never, ever, ever fails to change my state. So if I feel like I'm in a funk, if I just put one track on and dance to it, I just feel so much more alive. And I think that it's such a beautiful thing. And I was sea swimming, but I haven't been in for a while because it's very cold here.
I was going to say, you're in the Highlands and it's flipping cold.
Yeah. But I think like self-care is kind of like having all of these things and then you're really tuning into yourself on any given day and being like, what feels good? What feels good? What would be nice? Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the big takeaway from this conversation for me, Jo. I'm just seeing this happen and unfold, and I'm like, every day you do what feels right for you.
Yeah, and I've tried like things like morning rituals. I know that a lot of people swear by them. My brain just doesn't work like that. Like, I just need to be a bit more intuitive and allow myself that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think it's tapping into that creative way of living, isn't it? As opposed to that regimented tick the boxes and achieve way of living. I can remember watching an interview between Dawn French and John Cleese, and he said creativity wasn't a talent, it was a way of operating, living, something like that. I probably completely messed it up, but I'm sure we can, if you're interested, you can go and Google it. But I had it on my notice board for a while because it made me really think, it's not these backbreaking rituals and, routines.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. I think I remember posting something that said self-care means that you have to care consistently about yourself. Like that's it for me. Like, it's just that, like, I'm going to care consistently and I'm going to help myself consistently. And then if I do that, then it is self-care, right?
Oh my gosh. Jo, that's like, there's the mic drop. There's been so many mic drops in this chat, actually. Oh, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you. So I know your story. I know what you're doing now. It's going to help so many people listening. It really is. Because as much, when you're struggling, we both know it's so lovely to hear the stories of others. Mm-hmm. It's also really lovely to hear how they navigated their way to just living a better life for themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone has different tips and strategies, and then you can work out which ones work for you. And that's the beautiful thing about it, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love how you're an advocate for just trying, just seeing what works, what doesn't, just observing.
What you said before about curiosity, it's just so true. If we could just be a little bit more curious and a little bit less black and white, I think it would really help.
Yes.
Take pressure off. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, Jo, thank you for this. Now, I've been asking all my guests as we end our conversation some light-hearted, quick-fire questions, if you're up for it.
Sure.
So, come on then. On your dodgy, tough days, do you move your body or move the remote?
Move my body, dance, and then move the remote if I want to.
Well, I was going to say, you're winning both ways there, aren't you? You're closing that stress cycle that the Nagoski sisters say in their book, and then you're doing what feels relaxing. Yeah. You've nailed it, love. Okay, so I think I know what you're going to say then, because you might be a bit like me. Do you go for bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers?
Bag of Maltesers. I mean, if I went for a bag of almonds, it would be to prove something. I'm something that I'm not. I'd love a Malteser. It's just delicious. Yeah, 100%.
God, I know exactly. Now, do you ask for help or are you happy to hermit?
Ask for help, 100%. We cannot do it by ourselves. We cannot. It's one of my biggest life lessons. Ask for help. There are people out there that will want to give it to you.
Oh, Jo, I am so in awe of you sitting under that tree and calling your friends. You have no idea, because that is such for me, I would find that very difficult. But to hear that story of you and how that helps you, I'm so in awe of it. I just think, absolutely, asking for help. Mm-hmm. It's the way forward.
It's such a shame that so many of us struggle to ask for help, and I definitely did, but I just know now that it's not the way I want to live.
Yeah. Oh, you're brilliant. Okay, so lastly, what's the one self-compassionate thing you're going to do for yourself today that your future self will thank you for?
Probably cuddle my dog. Probably cuddle my dog. To just take some time out, because I think sometimes you can be rushing around so much. And I walk her and I love her very much, but sometimes it's just nice to sit down and have a cuddle.
Oh my God, she is just so gorgeous. I just love this dog of yours. Her little face and her little nose. Every time I see a picture, I just go, oh.
And she loves cuddles. She loves cuddles. Somebody said to me, our dogs don't like cuddles. And I was like, mine does.
And I actually have to share the story of her name because I think it's beautiful.
Oh, Hope. Okay. So I actually got Hope about a month after my breakdown. I'd wanted a dog for a really long time, and I was in counselling, and I was telling my counsellor that I wanted a dog, but there were all of these things to consider, and she was like, sounds like you're ready to get a dog. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I am. And I phoned up and I reserved her. And then I was like, what am I going to call her? And I just sat with it for a minute. And then I was like, hope. She is my hope. She was my hope for what was next for a new chapter. Yeah. And she's now known as hopeful quite a lot because she's always hopeful of a treat. So it works both ways.
Oh, hope. I'm also hopeful for a treat. Most days I completely understand Hope. Oh, she's just beautiful. And I love that story. I really do. I think it's, yeah.
It's another learning to me to just go after what when you really, really believe something is for you. It's like you spend so long denying things sometimes, but it's like, no, just go with your intuition. Yeah. Special.
Oh, Jo, this has been the most magical chat. Thank you so much. Your honesty, and I love how honest you are. You are wherever, whether it's social media, whether it's in your Right to Thrive membership. I just love that. But this has been so beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. I just know it's going to help people listening. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been an absolute joy.
Oh, go and squeeze Hope for me. Give her a little extra from me.
I will.
Okay, you take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Burnout Conversations. Please check the show notes for any links to items discussed today, and the original music and sound editing is by Chris Taylor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and have a spare few minutes, then it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave me a happy starry rating and review. It really does help this podcast reach a little further, and I'd just love it to land in the lap of those who, like me, last year are perhaps feeling isolated and lonely in their burnout struggle. Please note, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. Remember, you matter, so don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or mental health professional for support if you're having a rough time. Wishing you a great week and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.